もしやコスモでは。
Cosmo needs me free.
コスモ AP ラグジュアリースポーツ。
Welcome to episode 56 of my 76 Mazda Cosmo Restoration. In the last episode, I modified the rear trailing arms and fabricated mounts for the rear airbags. In this episode, it's time for the front. Now, as you may recall from episode 30-something, the front suspension has been mainly converted to 2nd Gen RX-7, which means 2nd Gen RX-7 struts. That may mean that these Air Dynamiks 2nd Gen RX-7 front struts should bolt right on with minimal effort. I'm kind of thinking that all I will need to do is elongate these holes a little. Amazing. All I'm going to have to do is elongate these holes ever so slightly. I really only have to shave a little out of these holes. I do want to keep them somewhat circular, so I'm just going to use this washer as a template. Oops, doesn't help when I move it. Well, here goes nothing. Well, that was easy. Well, that's about as close to bolt-on as I'm going to get. But these holes are really rough, and I can't let someone ever see my rough hole. So I'm just going to fill the unneeded part of each hole with weld, and then I'll just grind it back out again. Filled that one a little too much, but it's okay. As long as I can still see the outer edge, that's fine. I have to squint on this because there's no room for the mask. Don't get to use this thing very often. And now I just have to grind the holes out back to the previous hole that I had. And now just 3 more. Now you're probably asking me why I didn't just drill the holes out. Well, the problem is that the locating hole is off to one side. So there would be no way that the drill bit would center, and instead I'd end up with a hole that was off to one side. Now they're round enough, we can send some drill bits through to round them more. I don't know what size bit this is, it's some weird non-metric. I think it's 13/32. Either way, it's the closest one to these holes to round them out. Cool. Now the real test. Will it fit? Woohoo. And the strut should now bolt in like it was designed to fit. Now clearly this thing should be back there, so next time I take it out I'll have to remember to reverse it. These are really adjustable and they're way up high because the bag is pulling the strut into itself. So I'm just going to turn the ride height adjustment to the lowest. Oh, that's the mark. Okay, so that's as low as it can go safely, I guess. Bolt her in. I'm not going to bother tightening that up because I figure I'll have this thing out again a whole bunch of times. Cool. With the driver's side done, it's the exact same steps on the passenger side, so we're just going to plow right through that quickly. Oh, and that's why I hate this thing. The belts wear out so quickly. And I reserve the right to elongate these holes a bit in case I have to adjust the caster. For now, just going to toss a little bit of tape over the exposed grease and pillow ball. But what I'll do is next time I'm at the Mazda dealer, I will order some 2nd Gen RX-7 front strut top boots, because they should at this point pop right on. With the business ends of the air suspension mounted, now it's time for the support stuff, starting with this 3-gallon air tank. The only possible place this can go is in the trunk. And I have been putting years of thought as to where I'm going to mount this. And the most obvious spot, the spare tire well, is absolutely not where it's going to go. Why? Because I want to carry a spare tire. Now, I fully agree with Sir Mix-a-Lot, but in this case, I don't really want a lot of junk in my trunk because, well, frankly, I want to be able to use the trunk. Anything I put here or here really reduces the usability of the trunk. So all the air suspension components, and for that matter, the battery, are going to have to go at the side. So I'm kind of thinking air suspension stuff here, and later on battery in that corner, because technically being in that corner it offsets the weight of the driver. Not that it really matters, but that's my plan. Good riddance, 40-year-old Pioneer car stereo power booster amplifier of a grand total of 52 watts. Yeah, self-tappers into the sheet metal. I feel as though space might be an issue, so I think it's best I just pop a taillight in temporarily so I don't get myself into a situation I'm going to regret. Spent a little bit of time farting around with positioning, and it looks like this is about where I want to be. Call it 5.5 inches or so. That's as high as it can be without hitting that. And with the air tank in this position, it gives me room to put the solenoid block underneath and tuck the air compressor right behind in the fender well. So now I just need to make the requisite brackets and mounts. 18.5 plus, let's say, an inch on each end, 20.5. Just happen to have this perfectly sized scrap piece of aluminum. Let's just call it 6 inches for the width. I have no idea why Ride Tech made these holes so damn big. That's an M8 bolt. That's an M10. It's ridiculous. And after a bunch of measuring to center this thing, I have determined that these brackets are not square end to end, which might be why Ride Tech made such huge holes. Seems like it would have just been easier to center them. There is 0 point wasting time accurately drilling with such enormous holes. So I am just going to do this by eye, roughly in the middle of each slot. I figure with the non-precision holes here, there is no way this couldn't fit. Oh, look at that, it fits. cut some 4-inch 2x4 blocks, which I can use to set the height, because these brackets here are about 1 inch high, so that represents 5 inches, which is about the maximum height I'm willing to... Oh, you know what? This is too long. Smashed up against the taillight and smashed up against the inner wheel well. Much better. Buckets of room. Just a rough mark where the height of my bracket is. Doesn't have to be perfect, just gives me an idea. Kind of a curve here, so I just have to trace this out using the body of the marker. Then I'll cut that out. Doesn't have to be perfect. Then repeat. Hey, I'm going to call that close enough. I messed up my first template, so I had to make another. And now we'll just tape this in place. Now with the tank removed, I'll just mark the bolt holes. The only shape I really care about is this right here. Now these holes don't have to be super accurate because the matching holes on the air tank are freaking huge. These can probably be anywhere within 1/4 inch. Wow, I put some anti-seize on those threads, and I guess that's what the smoke is. Now, sometimes after welding these, they can gull when you remove the bolts, so always best to give it a lot of lube, and everything has to be cooled down all the way. And just go carefully. Oh yeah, this one's fine. Anti-seize helps too. Oh yeah, this one's fine too. Perfect. Off camera, I have had to grind off and re-weld more of these than I care to admit. Okay, and just bolt that to the bottom plate. Don't really need the air tank on there right now. Serves no purpose other than being in the way. Hey, that almost fits.
then I just need to support this side with a vertical. That'll then have a flange to weld it to the deck of the trunk. Needs to be, oh look at that, basically exactly 4 inches long. And make the flange, say 3/4 of an inch. That's some appropriate flangeness. Now this is a bit wide for my little homemade press brake, so I don't know if this is going to work. I kind of made this brake a few years ago for one specific job, so I don't know if it'll do this. One way to find out. Really crush it in there. Well, that's not awful. Manually clean up the ends, I think that'll... Yeah, that's not bad. Well, I knew that was going to happen. So we'll just have to trim it here, and roughly there. After a little grinding and filing, it fits. Now I just need to cut it to 4 inches. Bunch of clamps to hold it in place, so we'll weld it up in one go. And fits. Just losing some of this seam sealer so it doesn't turn to a bigger mess when I weld. And just give these a little bit of a scuffing. Whoa. Okay, turn the air on and just give these a little bit of a scuffing. Of course, you know what comes next. That would be the zinc-rich weld-through primer. And just so I don't make a mess with that stuff, masking off the surrounding area. Just a random that I've been using the same newspapers to mask things off for years. These newspapers are from 2018. And mask this as well with some new newspaper. Taking some of the weld primer off. Good to know that was pointless. Pop that in place and make sure it's square as it can be. Okay. It's one of those things that no matter how I look at it, it doesn't look straight, but when I measure it, it's basically straight. Oh, I had the welder turned up a little bit too high. That's what I get for not checking my settings. And I blew through into the somewhat thinner than I expected wheel well sheet metal. So, gotta clean it up a little bit here, and I can just, you know, make a few welds over these holes and call it a day. Stupid mistake. She just had the damn night crew fix this one. Even though the weld primer is supposed to be weldable, I always clean it out of any holes and spot welds because honestly, it's not that weldable. This is really hard to do because the trunk keeps bumping my helmet. Well, I really made a hash of this thing when welding it. The wheel well sheet metal is a lot thinner than I thought, not because of rust, but just because it's thin. Thanks, Mazda. And I had the welder turned up way too high. I guess it just wasn't thinking. So now I'm having to go back and regrind all the fixes I made where I burned through. This rear bracket is going to be a lot more annoying because of the bumper mounting thingy here. So I think my best bet is to just create a plate that comes out, takes a 90 degrees so it can be welded to this side, then figure out this end once I get there. Now the bracket for this side will basically be very similar to the one for this side. It's going to be a piece of plate with 2 nuts welded in, so we can skip that part and then turn the camera back on when it gets interesting. And it was off camera that I just made this 2-inch wide plate with 2 captured nuts. This inner bumper bracket reinforcement is not straight, so I can't just measure and draw a straight line. So I'll just have to use the straight edge to mark each side. Mark that and cut. Obviously I transfer the line to the other side of the piece. About 1/2 inch. Two inches is the width of the flange I just made. And about another 1/2 inch. Okay, just clamp that in place so I can mark the areas where it is going to interfere with the stock bumper support. I'd say I have about a 20% chance of actually getting this thing lined up and bending it exactly where I want it. That's not bad. And the thing is, I know those are roughly in the right spots because this die is 2 inches wide. Oh, oops. Looks like I need to trim these sides a little. Just pulling off about a blade's width. Close enough. We can weld that. Just a little bit of angle iron clamped on so that when I weld this it stays reasonably straight. Straight enough. And I'll weld this side as well. Not bad.
That still fits. I won't weld it in yet because I have to figure out this side. Yeesh. Three-quarters of an inch. Half inch. Close enough. Half inch. And my height is just a hair over 4 inches. I think we call that a 1/16. Accidentally didn't hit record when cutting these 2 notches. I spent way too much time trying to bend this in the press brake. It just wasn't staying put, so you know what works? Not that, that's for sure. Well, it's sort of, you know, that doesn't work very well at all. Dear. Okay, I can clean that up in the press. Woohoo. Better. Not perfect. Better. And that's the idea. Now I just need to make another one for the other side, but since it's exactly the same, I'll do that off camera. And through the magic of editing, and then there were 2. And one will go right about here-ish. Right about here. I may have to trim this one a little bit at the bottom. Little bit of angle iron to hold it in place and keep it straight while welding. And I just have to weld the other side the same. Oh, that is stuck. Just measured 1/2 inch on this bit of scrap sheet metal. I decided to add some flanges to give this a bit more strength. In fact,
actually going to be a bit more weight on it than it looks like at the moment, but you'll see that later. And finally, cut off the excess. Just give it a mark right here, give or take. I'll mark it on this side. In order for that to fit flat, you got to get rid of all the seam sealer, and not a lot of room to work. Well, I think you get the idea. I'm gonna spend some time doing this. Just need to cut a little bit off of this flange here. That fits pretty well. And add some holes. The next component to be mounted is the solenoid block that directs the air to the air springs. And I'm kind of thinking right here under the tank is the best place to put it. To be continued.